So the question that you want to be asking yourself when you are factoring quadratic expressions or quadratic equations is which two numbers add together to create this number and multiply together to create that number. So in this instance, right, in this instance of x squared plus 5x plus 6, you can see that we have 5 here and a 6 here. And the 6 is a constant, which means there's no variable attached to it. And the 5 has this x here. And the number that has the x is the number you want to find out what you can add to get. And then the number that doesn't have an x next to it, so that would be the constant, that's the number you want to see what you can multiply to get. And then whatever two numbers you can pick to satisfy both of those conditions, whichever two numbers add up to 5 and multiply to create 6, these are the two numbers that you're going to use here and here. And in that case, it's 3 and 2. So if you're still a bit confused, I'm going to give you another example. Let's say we had another quadratic expression like x squared plus 15x plus 54. Now we ask ourselves, what two numbers can we find that add to create 15 and multiply to create 54? And in this case, those two numbers, I'll leave those underlined for now actually. Those two numbers would be 9 and 6. Because if we add 9 and 6, it gives us 15. And then if we multiply 9 and 6, that gives us 54. So these are the two numbers that we want to use. So when we draw our factored version of this quadratic expression, we're going to put an x here. We'll have two sets of parentheses. We'll have the x's here, and because we're working with positive numbers, we're just going to have two plus signs. And then the two numbers we'll use in these gaps here and here are just going to be 9 and 6. And just like that, we have factored this quadratic expression. Now, when you work with these quadratic expressions, when you're factoring them, you have to give thought to negative numbers. And I'll give you an example of that. Let's say we had x squared minus 7x plus 12. So we ask ourselves the same question, right? Which two numbers would multiply to create 7? And in this case, negative 7. You have to take a look at the sign that you have here. So which two numbers would multiply to create negative 7? Or which two numbers would add to create negative 7? And which two numbers multiply to create 12? Well, let's look at the addition first. And remember, when you're adding negative numbers like this, you're really subtracting. But in this case, you would choose negative 4 and negative 3, because if you take a negative 4 and you add negative 3 to it, basically this is just going to become subtraction. So you have negative 4 minus 3, which will give you negative 7. But if you multiply these two numbers, if you multiply negative 4 and negative 3, because you're multiplying two negative numbers, they become positive. And then you're left with a positive 12. So this is how we're able to add them, and I say quote unquote add them to get negative 7. But we can still multiply them to get positive 12, because when you multiply two negative numbers, you get a positive. So to finish factoring this, we would draw something similar to what we had before. We put in two sets of parentheses. We leave the x's here, and we use two subtraction signs, and we drop in 4 and 3. I'll give you a couple more examples. So let's say we had something like x squared plus x minus 12. How do we factor this? So we go through a similar process. We ask ourselves, which numbers add to create this? And in this case, it's important to remember that even though we just have x here, there's an invisible 1. There's an invisible 1 that goes right here. Because anything multiplied by 1 just is itself. So we're actually able to just drop a 1 there without really changing anything. So we have this 1 next to the x, which means that we're looking for something that will add to create a positive 1, but will multiply to create negative 12. And it's important to realize that this minus sign is here. In this case, in the case of factoring these quadratic expressions, you can think of this as negative 12. So let's look at this positive 1 first. Well, actually, let's look at the negative 12. You can multiply 4 and 3 to get 12, but because it's negative 12, we're going to need a positive number and a negative number. And if we choose the numbers positive 4 and negative 3, this will give us something that when we add them, so we take positive 4 and we add a negative 3 to it, which is really just like subtracting 3, so we have 4 minus 3. This actually gives us the positive 1 that we're looking for. And then if we multiply these two numbers, if we take positive 4 and multiply it by negative 3, this gives us negative 12, because a positive multiplied by a negative creates a negative number. So positive 4 and negative 3 are the numbers that we're looking for to factor this quadratic expression. And now we can factor it. So we draw something similar. We have two sets of parentheses. We put some x's here and here, and we're going to have positive and a negative. The positive number is going to be 4. The negative number is going to be 3. I'm going to give you one more example. Let's say we had x squared minus 5x minus 24. We ask ourselves the same question, so we see here that we have negative 5, and we also have a negative 24, so we have two negatives, and we ask ourselves which numbers will add to create negative 5 and will also multiply to create negative 24. Well, I know that two factors of 24 are 6 and no, actually, two factors of 24 are 8 and 3. These are the factors that we can use here. So if we use them, right, say if we had negative 8 and 3. If we add these, so we take a negative 8 and we add 3 to it, this is going to give us negative 5. And then if we were to look at this now, if we look at the negative 24 now, if we multiply -8 and +3 together, it's going to give us -24, because a negative times a positive equals a negative. And this way we know which two numbers we can use for factoring this quadratic expression. So we do what we've been doing. We draw two sets of parentheses. We put x's here. We leave a minus sign and a positive sign. We drop the 8 here, and we drop the 3 here. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you learned something helpful. If you are interested in seeing more tutorials related to mathematics, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. And if you're interested in online tutoring, check out the description of this video. You may find something helpful.